Today, we're going to talk about two bacteria, Pseudomonas and Bacillus. If you've ever made rice water, then this is what you were creating. Remember when I made it? So not only did I make this and tell you guys about it over 4 years ago, now we're gonna go back into that rice water video and unpack it scientifically. So let's talk about it. While rice water is often praised for all of its wonderful benefits, what you guys really don't understand is whenever you are fermenting something, what you're actually doing is growing bacteria. So today we're going to talk about the two bacteria that have led to so many different follicle infections with women with naturally curly hair that have fell into this rice water craze. And if you stick around into the end of this video, I'll explain to you the difference between the rice water that you made in your kitchen and the rice water that you see on product. Even if you've only used rice water one time, baby, most likely it's the reason why you're having the type of dandruff, seborrheic dermatitis, CCCA, folliculitis, and all of the different things that you have now. This was your introduction to the bacterial realm. The fermentation process of rice water looks like this, what I'm displaying here on the screen. And when you are fermenting rice, yes, during certain fermentation processes followed in a certain way, not like the way that y'all been doing it in the kitchen, right? Sometimes it can develop really beneficial nutrients, but what you guys fail to realize is on top of it developing beneficial nutrients, it can also develop different forms of bacteria, and we're going to talk about two of them today. Look at the little critters, look at them. Now here, this is a video clip that I pulled from online, but this is a video clip from my microscope. So again, stick around until the end. I'm gonna get there. And I know you're not gonna want to hear this, but just taking the water and even your essential oils and all of the stuff that y'all been doing is really not enough to keep these two forms of bacteria from growing. It will not. And again, here on the screen, what you guys are looking at is the bacteria that was grown from me simply leaving this rice water here for less than 72 hours. So imagine what the rice water is like that you've had in your closet. But whatever, we're gonna get to the actual names of the bacteria because y'all always think I'm making something up. What's crazy is whenever we're talking about rice water as a protein treatment, right, it's never supposed to even be added to the scalp. It's not supposed to touch the scalp at all. So in theory, if you use rice water a certain way, only adding it to the ends, which I still don't recommend, like don't do it, but if you added it to the ends, then okay, because this bacteria, even though it got legs and it can still crawl up there, that's why I don't recommend you doing it. You're not necessarily focusing these two forms of bacteria on the scalp, but that's not how y'all do it. Y'all rub it in. So many women used to like put the rice water on their hair and then put a processing cap on, then a stocking cap, then a wig, and then just walking around with rice water under a wig with wet hair all day. Y'all not gonna admit it, but y'all did it. I know y'all did it because I was there fixing what you did in videos like this. So don't say you ain't do it because you did it. So then most of the time you notice that women who swear by rice water also always need oils and greases and butters because their scalp is dry. Most women that use rice water or things like it are also women who swear by oil, swear by grease because you believe that your scalp needs it. Well, you have dandruff or seborrheic dermatitis, there was first a trigger, and then after that trigger the inflammation was caused, and after the inflammation you get your dandruff, your folliculitis, your seborrheic dermatitis. A lot of dermatologists don't understand how you got here, but a lot of dermatologists also don't know that you was making rice nipple juice in your living room either. So first, let's talk about this bacteria, Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas is a bacteria that's real special, right? And remember, this is the bacteria that is inside of the rice water. As I'm talking, look at the screen. Look at this little critter with the arms and the legs. This is the one with the arms and the legs. Now, this bacteria is commonly found in rice water, as you can see, and it thrives in this nutrient dense atmosphere. Not to mention, the more rice water present, the more this bacteria is able to reproduce itself. So this is a bacteria that can get really widespread really fast. Let's say you only use rice water in one area, or you only used it one time. That is enough to give yourself an intense bacterial infection of the follicle for years down the line, especially if your practices are not those that would kill this form of yeast or bacteria. Like if you shampoo your hair and then add grease to the scalp right away, I want you to remember a lot of these different forms of bacteria can hold their breath for a short period of time, just like lice. The fact that it can form spores allows it to survive in intensely violent atmospheres. This is why a lot of you, when you're going to the dermatologist, it doesn't matter what they prescribe to you, it doesn't matter what they give to you, your follicle infection is not going away, because your practices, your patterns, and your routine are those that encourage this type of bacteria to be able to just proliferate over and over again. And it allows these forms of bacteria to become stronger and stronger, because y'all don't even know it's there. You just think you growing a little healthy hair product, your rice nipple juice. Well, this isn't your rice nipple juice. You guys can do your own research, because this is a very notable species that if it enters like into an open wound, or if it's ingested into the body, it can cause massive food poisoning. This is one of the main bacteria that's involved within food poisoning, and so many other infections if ingested into the body, or if it gets into the skin through an open wound. The majority of women who are doing things like rice water and things of that nature have a whole lot of open wounds on the scalp. Pseudomonas, again, we're going to talk about this one again. Pseudomonas is one that everybody needs to know about. Now, this species is gram negative. So you have two different bacteria that you're growing in this glass. 1 gram negative bacteria and 1 gram positive, y'all. Bacteria is known for its diversity in its metabolism and its ability, again, to survive in really harsh environments, or really cold environments, really hot environments. It really doesn't matter what you throw at this form of bacteria, it's gonna make it. It's so hard to kill it. If there are people who have problems with their immune system or from any type of illness, this is a bacteria that is really going to wreak havoc on your skin, your hair, and your nails, because it can really enter the body. Its metabolism is crazy, and its ability to move through the body is like nothing you've ever seen before. This bacteria is notorious for creating skin and scalp infections if any product or tool is infected with this bacteria in any way, shape, or form. So the fact that you willingly grow this bacteria in a jar and put it in your scalp and leave it there for days on end is crazy. What are some symptoms of a scalp infection? Like, how would you know if whether or not you have a scalp infection? Because some of y'all are like, oh my god, I've been using rice water forever and I'm fine. Well, the symptoms that you think are normal for Black women are actually the beginning stages of hair follicle and hair shaft miniaturization for you. I try to tell people all the time that when you look at curly hair, it lies to you. Curly hair is swollen when it is wet, and when you air dry your hair, you lock your hair into that state, and your hair stays in that state until it's wet again, which means that your hair is drying in a swollen state. That's why this beautiful woman can look like this here, right? But then when you look at her follicle under an electric microscope, under an electron microscope, what you'll see is the miniaturization. Now I'm going to slow this down just so you can get a visual representation of what hair miniaturization looks like. I say all the time that the average person has 100,000 follicles, and each follicle has anywhere between 1 to 4 strands coming out of each pore. Now, if you look closely here, you can see that in some places there are 3 hair shafts coming out of each pore. In some places you see 2, and some you only see 1. And then you're going to notice that depending on what area she goes in her head, sometimes you'll see that her hair shaft will be really thick in some places, but then you go in other places of the hair and it's more sparse, they're more thinner. And then something that is really key to hair follicle miniaturization is when you see 2 to 3 different hair shafts coming out of the same pore, but you'll see one that's really thick and then the other that are thin. Well, guess what? Those other thin ones are on their way out. Soon those hairs will fall out of the hair unless you begin to balance your scalp's natural microbiome. And if you're a person who's always using rice water or who used rice water in the past and then stop, just because you stop using a product does not mean these little critters stop using you, okay? Now, the thing is that you guys are also going to see displayed here on the video the reason that you guys think that rice water is just so amazing. Rice water and it being great for your hair has nothing to do with the rice, but everything to do with the bacteria that you're growing in the jar. What is linking to your hair is this bacteria, you guys, and you can see it clearly here on the video. You can see these spores go link to the damaged spots within the hair shaft, and then they link to it, and then they multiply themselves within the hair shaft. So you think that you're just treating your hair, and you're right. Yes, the holes and the gaps within the hair shaft that you're trying to fill in, absolutely they get fooled, but they get fooled by forms of bacteria, and that's just what it is. Yes, there are a few certain nutritional benefits, right, to rice itself or to fermented rice, but the way that you guys are fermenting rice in your closet and the way that rice is really supposed to be fermented in certain areas with certain lighting at certain temperatures, like it's a whole thing. And the way that the rice is being fermented is not it, right? Again, with me doing everything right as a scientist and being completely sterile, you guys, this bacteria was still able to grow. And what you guys don't understand is, like I explained to you in this video series here, link in the description box below, your scalp is home to to hundreds of different forms of yeast and bacteria and a couple of parasites, right? So all you do by adding bacteria to the scalp is feeding it. You're feeding the yeast and bacteria on your scalp. It eats it and then it poops it out, right? Just like there's a form of yeast that lives on the scalp that eats the oil on your scalp, poops out oleic acid, and the oleic acid that the bacteria poops out is the thing that is inducing your skin cell turnover cycle to increase itself. And then here comes dandruff. You do not have dry scalp. Within my 7-day challenge, which has been popping up on the screen, women are curing their dandruff after 50 years of dealing with dandruff, of 50 years of greasing and oiling and buttering the scalp. They're able to humble themselves and say, okay, let me learn something I don't know. They apply it, and in a week, issues that they've been dealing with for 50 years are over. Try it. The human scalp is home to so many different forms of yeast and bacteria and sebum and sweat and all of that. So when you add something like rice water to the scalp, you are giving these 2 forms of bacteria an amazing environment to thrive. And remember, one of them creates spores, so it's just creating more and more forms of yeast and bacteria. That's what's giving you that sleek finish film over the hair shaft that you think is just doing something so great to your hair. Girl, you have bacteria doo-doo, and bacteria filling up your follicles is not healthy hair. That's why if you go to a cosmetologist and they do a complete detox on your hair, it's gonna be like, oh my god, my hair fell out. No, your hair didn't fall out. I removed all of these little critters, and now you can feel how your hair feels without them, and you can see all the little niblet holes that they was leaving because they was eating, they was having kids and pooping on your hair shaft, and you're like, come here, rice nipple juice, come on. What you guys have to understand is these forms of yeast and bacteria are living organisms, right? And anything that lives is eaten, and anything that eats, it gotta get it out. When we're talking about Demodex mites, they don't have no booty holes, so when they eat too much, they explode. Well, when they get done eating, they release toxins into the body and on the scalp and within the hair shaft. This bacteria release toxins that mess up the scalp's natural microflora. This leads to so many different forms of inflammation and scalp infections like dandruff. Having dry scalp or dandruff is classified as a follicle infection. And my baby, if you are a person who uses rice water, absolutely you have dandruff or what you see as dry scalp. So then you go right back on top of that and you add a bunch of grease and oil and butter. Oil and butter is feeding that bacteria. You're adding more food. You're not killing anybody. You just like, oh, she gave us some cookies and shit. So these are things that I really want you to understand and really study the context and the contents of the things that you are putting in and on your body. So if you're a person whose scalp and hair is always itching no matter what, then you might want to check on that. And I also want y'all to know that yes, I'm talking about rice water today, but these two forms of bacteria are in a lot of y'all homemade products. I know y'all want to support small businesses, but every small business shouldn't be doing everything, okay? Everybody shouldn't be cooking. Everybody shouldn't be making hair products in their house without preservatives and stuff like that, because then you end up with scalp and follicle infections because you guys are growing bacteria that y'all don't even know how to pronounce in your kitchen, putting it in a bottle, putting a label on them, sending them to people's house to combat the issue that you've caused. But in reality, all your grease and the presence of this bacteria on the scalp can really disturb the scalp's natural pH balance. And by disturbing your scalp's natural pH balance, you create a favorable and almost majestic environment for this form of yeast to grow on the scalp. And this is where you have yeast infections and all of that on the scalp. That's why everybody want to act like they don't remember when y'all was putting coochie cream on the scalp, but there was one point in time where everybody was using monostat on their scalps and they was like, oh my god, it's making my hair grow. And the thing is, it didn't make your hair grow. You just had a yeast infection in your scalp from all of these different things that you were trying, and the monostat killed the yeast. Y'all nasty. Y'all been crazy and nasty for a long time. But I tell you guys all the time that this yeast lives naturally on the scalp anyway, but if it grows too much, then that's gonna lead to dandruff or seborrheic dermatitis. So if you have dandruff or seborrheic dermatitis and you use rice water one time, just one time years ago, it doesn't matter. It's enough to create spores, because if you use rice water that one time and then that was it, but then you continue co-washing, or after you use that rice water, let's say you let it sit for a couple of days and then you didn't wash your hair for like another week, girl, them spores still living in your scalp right now today. Right now. Say hi, hello, how are you? No, we keep going back and forth, but I had to tell you what the bacteria was first and then its reaction on the scalp. So Pseudomonas on the scalp. Remember, this bacteria is highly adaptable. So again, it does not matter what homemade remedy you put on it, what type of essential oil you put on it. This is an adaptable bacteria that can thrive in so many different environments, boo. So you just adding a little bit, a couple of drops of oil ain't gonna do a thug thizzle or nothing, okay? It's not gonna do nothing. When this bacteria is introduced to the scalp, it can colonize within the hair's follicle and within the hair's cuticle. It is a fact, and this is what it's doing here, right here on the screen. It is getting together, getting ready to colonize. These bacteria, rice water did not grow your hair. It didn't make your hair feel good. You were literally making a home for these two bacteria, and it's not up for debate. It's right here on the screen. This is what we're talking about, and don't take my word for it. Go research it for yourself, because this bacteria creates a biofilm. So you guys know how you like, oh my god, I used rice water and my hair felt amazing. The majority of women who use rice water were women with high porosity hair, or women with damaged hair, or women with damaged hair, aka holes in the hair shaft and in the cuticle. So when you use rice water, which is nothing but a bowl of this bacteria creates microfilm. So that slick, smooth feeling that you felt, that was the bacteria. The biofilm isn't for you. The biofilm is to protect it. The biofilm is something that this bacteria creates to protect its own colonies. And what is it protecting it from? Your immune system. It's protecting it from your immune system. So remember what I said about doctors, it being really hard for them to kill these different forms of follicle inflammation that you guys have. It's because you guys have been playing in hair products and growing different forms of yeast and bacteria that create biofilms that protect them from any type of antibiotic that the doctors could try to give it. And it is also, again, the thing that gave you the illusion that, oh, rice water makes my hair feel so good. So that's why when I get comments like this, like, oh, well, I've been using it for 4 years, and it's like, girl, okay, that just means that your bacteria are a little slow. But one day they will take over the hair follicle, because whether you want to believe me or not, it's there, and they're colonizing within your follicle as we speak. As you're typing and don't believe me or whatever, you are a host to billions of different spores that you're constantly growing in your rice water. And if you want to keep growing them and being a host monsters inside me, then do it, girl, do it. Remember, this bacteria can create enzymes that end up damaging the scalp's tissue. So again, you think you have dandruff, but in reality your body is literally fighting to stay afloat, because you're constantly putting something in your scalp that is actually an enemy to it. I don't care what anybody says, rice water is an enemy to your scalp and your hair shaft. It is not a friend. The weakening of your scalp's tissue, it even furtherly weakens your scalp's defense. So it's weakening your immune system, it's weakening your scalp's moisture barrier and that layer, and is also allowing this bacteria to colonize and get stronger and stronger. This is why doctors are not able to heal you guys from your different forms of follicle infections, because you'll go see a doctor and then they'll tell you what the problem is, but you'll say, I'm still going to use my oil, I'm still going to use my rice water, but I only do it once a month. Why do you say that? Don't you understand that you doing it once a month is enough to create enough spores to last you for 6 years? I really need y'all to understand that. And I don't think and by you weakening the scalp's defense, not only are you making your scalp more susceptible to dandruff, right? There's so many other scalp infections that you're going to be more prone to, because your body can no longer defend itself. So all for you to have a stronger hair shaft, because that's all a protein treatment is for. Rice water is a protein treatment. So all for you to have a stronger hair shaft, you are weakening your skin barrier, causing follicle follicle inflammation, and all of these things. So as we're putting these things together, let me know in the comments if whether or not it's pretty easy for you to put things together and see why Black women are #1 in scalp inflammation. Even people who only try rice water one time is enough. And lastly, this bacteria has the ability to congregate and mix with other microbes, making it even harder to treat. So again, I'm constantly telling you guys this all the time, and this isn't just for rice water. With your other homemade products, the different forms of yeast and bacteria that you guys are growing in these jars with no preservatives, or even if they do have preservatives, a chemist is a chemist, and it's a respected profession for a reason, okay? And just because somebody has a bachelor's in chemistry does not mean that they are the master mixologists of the world and they should be telling you to mix stuff in your room. Even doing things like this, you know, watching people put food in their hair.
Delicious sweet potato. Oh, I freaking love sweet potatoes. They're sweet, they're carbs. I love sweet carbs. But the great thing about sweet potatoes is that they're good for you. So boiling will cause some of those great nutrients to leach out in the water, just an FYI. So I'm removing the skin of my baked sweet potato, and I'm just cutting it into small pieces that'll fit into my blender. Adding about half a cup of water, and then that 1/4 cup of olive oil, just to make blending easier and also to help it spread neatly throughout my hair. Now just close the cap on your blender or blender cup. Gonna help loosen those shrunken curls so it's not so tangled, and it's also gonna help the sweet potato conditioner apply more smoothly. Going in, just carefully and as evenly as possible, apply the sweet potato treatment all over your hair. So sweet potatoes taste delicious, but they're also packed with so many vitamins and minerals needed to maintain healthy hair and skin.
These are all things that lead to these severe scalp infections that it is impossible for dermatologists to treat, because this is a form of yeast and bacteria that y'all are growing at home, and this bacteria mixes with other microbes on your scalp. Understand, the human scalp is home to anywhere between 100 to 1,000 different forms of yeast and bacteria. So if you grow rice water, right, you have rice water in the cup and you put it in your head, and just this one bacteria that we're talking about today, this one bacteria it create spores. So this one bacteria can create thousands and thousands of itself, and all of these thousands of different spores of bacteria can interact with the hundreds of different Demodex mites on your scalp, the different forms of yeast and bacteria that are on your scalp. The rice water can react to those and create a completely different form of bacteria. This is what I'm talking about in my videos. I've told you guys for years that I've told you guys for years that you cannot play in different hair products, and I've told you guys for years that you guys have played in so many different do-it-yourself things, putting sweet potatoes and eggs and cheese and ooh, sweet potatoes and rice and all types of shit that y'all keep putting in y'all hair. And so it has these different forms of bacteria, and then they are linking with the different forms of yeast and bacteria that live on your scalp naturally and creating new forms of bacteria that doctors are not able to treat. They've never seen it before, because rice water and the way that you guys are using it is not normal, and every person is different, right? The amount of bacteria that I have on my scalp and the amount of bacteria you have on your scalp are two different things, right? So if I put rice, me and you could both use rice water. I won't, and I never have, never will, but me and you could both use the same jar of rice water, but it'll create two different forms of bacteria, because my scalp's microbiome and your scalp's microbiome are two completely different things. Do you understand what I mean? But if you use something like, let's say, and don't get me wrong, I am not a part of the Beehive, okay? I am not a Beehive member, let's be very clear. But when you see different products like this, right, I think Beyonce has a product with rice water in it, everybody's just like, oh my god, Beyonce using rice water too. Listen, The rice water that is in products and the rice water that y'all use in y'all hair are two completely different things. Whenever they have rice water or coconut oil or anything in a product, it is in a extract form, right? Check this video here where I teach you more about extracts and tinctures, but it looks like this, right? Here on the screen you can see when they create a conditioner, and when they put the extract in, it is a couple of drops, and this is what an extract looks like. An extract is like they pull out only the nutrients, only the things that they want. So let's say a chemist wanted to extract the nutrients out of the rice water, they're gonna leave all of the bacteria there, and they're only gonna take the pieces out that they want, and then it don't stink. They have a completely different process that allows them to pull out the things that make rice water good for hair growth or whatever it is, right? But this is one of the things that single-handedly has made Black women one of the leaders in scalp inflammation, and this is one of the main reasons that there are so many different forms of follicle inflammation that doctors don't even know how to treat, because the forms of bacteria and yeast that you guys are growing in the house have the ability to link with your scalp natural microbiome and create different forms of bacteria that doctors have never seen. So if a doctor hasn't seen a bacteria before, they haven't ran tests on it, they haven't studied it, so they don't know what it is, they don't know how to kill it or how to treat it. So you're then stuck with this scalp inflammation forever, all because you decided that instead of just going down to the Amazon, going to the Walmart, to the Sally's, and just getting a protein treatment, or and just getting a regular protein treatment, if that's what you need, you wanted to make it in your kitchen. Now you got a wild African, Egyptian, Australian follicle infection that ain't nobody never even heard of. You creating new stuff. You need to get a patent pending on that shit that's in your scalp. So a lot of women have the same exact symptoms: itching, redness, the super dry scalp, flaking, the soreness to touch, like intense redness, intense balding in some spots, thinning areas. These are all symptoms of these two forms of bacteria colonizing within the hair's follicle. And understand that a colonization of your hair's follicle is not going to be removed with a shampoo. It's not. A colonization of the hair's follicle will not be removed with just you using what the doctor prescribed to you one time. And this is why it becomes frustrating even for dermatologists, because you'll do a practice like rice water on your scalp for 3 years, for 6 years, for 4 years, and then you figure out that it's not what you're supposed to do. You come into the dermatology office, they give you something, and then you want their solution to work in 2 days, in 2 shampoos, in 2 months, where it doesn't work like that. You have to give your body a chance to respond. You have to give those different forms of yeast and bacteria that you've allowed to colonize within your follicle and your hair shaft, you have to give them the ability to weaken, right? That's just like if you're killing, if an exterminator comes, they have to go through a certain process to kill the infestation. So when you are a person who's coming from Team Natural Practices, yes, things can change, yes, things can turn around, but one of the number one things that you have to let go of is that instant gratification. You have to understand that you have to allow your body the time to recuperate from the damage that you've caused, my baby. You can't do messed up stuff to your hair for 15 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, and then change for 2 weeks and be like, nothing's working. It's like, girl, when none of the prayers that nobody was sending you working, so why are you rushing your hair? Okay, I really hope that made sense, and I really hope that I didn't freak you out too much, but I just really wanted to give you guys an up close view of the different forms of yeast and bacteria that you grow whenever you use rice water. So in closing, if you still want to use rice water, you do not have to give me a I have a dream speech in the comments. You don't. do your thug thizzle. I just need you to know that every time you put rose water, why do I keep saying rose water? Anytime you put rice water in your hair, say hello. Hey little critter, hey little critter, hey 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 hey. Like, make sure you say hello, because you're inviting a whole new family of stuff into your scalp, and you're creating forms of yeast and bacteria that one day your dermatologist or no one will ever be able to treat. Remember, I'm really good at what I do, but there are some clients that did team natural things for way too long that I cannot help. Please don't let that be you. I make these videos so that way you can avoid it. But if you want to keep doing it, baby, then do it. But just remember that you were warned. All right.